Cancer is a huge and sometimes confusing subject, which is perhaps why many people are put off from having a conversation about cancer. But this doesn't have to be the case. We believe that many people avoid talking about cancer because we worry that we don't have enough information to start the conversation. Another common concern is that once the conversation starts, we may not know what to say or have the right answers to questions that come up. Let's start with some basic information about cancer in simple terms to help give you the confidence to start the conversation. Please bear in mind the facts we will talk about apply to the UK but may vary elsewhere. We'll talk you through some of the key facts and figures and give an overview of what cancer is and how it starts. We'll then talk through the difference that your conversation could make in terms of encouraging prevention and early diagnosis. Key UK facts. 1 in 2 people born in the UK after 1960 will develop cancer in their lifetime. There were around 352,000 new cases of cancer in the UK in 2013. More than 4 in 10 cases of cancer could be prevented largely through healthy lifestyle changes. It's more common as we get older. Most cases are in people aged 50 or over. 1 in 5 cases are diagnosed through emergency routes, and patients diagnosed this way are more likely to have later stage disease and therefore lower chances of survival. 1 in 2 people diagnosed with cancer now survive their disease for 10 or more years. Genetics specialists estimate only 2 to 3% of all cancers are caused by a fault in a gene that has been passed down in the family. So what is cancer? Cancer happens when the DNA that makes up the genes in our cells becomes damaged and causes a cell to stop functioning properly. Damage can happen just because the body isn't perfect, and sometimes it makes mistakes when copying DNA to make new cells. But damage can also be caused by things like tobacco smoke or too much UV radiation from the sun. If enough damage builds up, a cell can start to divide in an uncontrolled way, making copies of itself, which can lead to a tumour. How many different types are there? In our experience, many people don't realise that there are over 200 different types of cancer. This is because we have around 200 different types of cells in our body, and they all have the potential to go wrong. Even within these 200 cancers, there are subtypes. For example, there are over 10 different types of breast cancer, and they may all have different treatments. This means that 2 people diagnosed with the same cancer at the same time may have completely different treatment for their disease. Really, when we use the word cancer, we are describing lots of different diseases that all have different signs and symptoms and a variety of different treatments. This is why cancer can be complicated. And it's important that if people want to talk about their particular cancer, that they are directed towards their specialist team. 4 most common cancers. Out of the more than 200 different types of cancer, there are 4 that are more common than all the others put together, making up over half of all of the cancers diagnosed in the UK every year. These are breast, prostate, lung and bowel cancers. You can see how many more cases there are of these compared to other cancer types. Most common treatments. You may have heard of the most common treatments for cancer: surgery, radiotherapy and chemotherapy. People diagnosed with cancer may have only one of these treatments or a combination. You may have heard of others, but let's keep this simple. You can visit Cancer Research UK's website for more information. Primary and secondary cancers. When we speak to people, they're often confused about primary and secondary cancers. A primary cancer is the name for where a cancer starts. Cancer can also spread to other parts of the body, and this is called a secondary cancer or a metastases. This happens when cells are broken off from the primary site and travel to another part of the body. When this happens, the treatment will still be for the primary cancer that has spread. For example, if bowel cancer spreads to a different part of the body, the treatment will still be for a secondary bowel cancer. This is important to know when looking for information about cancer treatments. Survival. Many people still think of cancer as a death sentence, but 1 in 2 of those diagnosed with cancer now survive the disease for 10 years or longer. This is twice as many as 40 years ago, so it's getting better. However, this is for the overall picture. Survival is much better for some cancers than for others, as you can see from this graph. Nowadays, some types of cancer are treated as a chronic disease, similar to the way we now think of some types of heart disease and diabetes. Prevention. There are things that we know that can reduce our risk of cancer. You may remember some of these from the quiz, such as not smoking, keeping a healthy weight, cutting down on alcohol, eating a healthy balanced diet, keeping active, and enjoying the sun safely. You can also see here that different cancers are associated with different risk factors. Scientists have estimated that more than 4 in 10 cases of cancer can be prevented largely through healthier lifestyles. Early diagnosis. Thousands of lives could be saved if cancer was diagnosed earlier in the UK. For example, when bowel cancer is diagnosed at the earliest stage, more than 9 out of 10 people survive their disease for 5 years or more, compared with less than 1 in 10 when diagnosed at the later stage. Early diagnosis plays a big part in how successful treatment might be. The sooner we catch cancer, the more likely it is that we can treat it successfully. That's where the power of a good conversation comes in. You can encourage people to spot cancer earlier by going to seek medical advice or see their GP. However, we are aware it's not always possible to diagnose cancers early. Signs and symptoms. Because there are so many different types of cancer, each with its own set of possible signs and symptoms, we can't learn them all. But we don't need to. There really is only one thing to remember, which is, if it's not normal for you, get it checked. This doesn't mean we need to regularly check our bodies in a particular way or at a particular time, but if you spot something that's not normal for you, it's important to tell your doctor. Cancer screening. Another way to spot cancer early is through the NHS cancer screening programmes. There are currently 3 cancer screening programmes in the UK: bowel, breast and cervical. The purpose of screening is to test apparently healthy people for any signs of the disease before they develop symptoms. We know that cancer screening saves thousands of lives every year because it can detect cancers at an early stage and in some cases even prevent cancers from developing in the first place. But screening is not perfect. The tests can miss cancers and have other risks too. Whether or not someone goes for screening is their choice, and people need balanced information to help them make that decision. Information is sent with a screening invitation, and there's lots of further information available, for example from Cancer Research UK. We've only covered the basics here, so please follow the links below to our website for more information. Make sure you check out the local stats tool too, to find out what's happening in your area. We know that cancer can be complicated, and that's often why people feel too uncomfortable to talk about it. We don't expect you to remember all the key facts, but just talking about cancer is the important thing. It's fine to say, "I don't know," to questions that might be raised. We will talk more about where to direct people for information in week 3, but for now, choose one of the following resources to take a look at in more detail. Find something you think might be useful to use in a conversation about cancer, and share your findings in the comments section.